Oh, yeah, I mean, like you say, GreenSheep is part of the old school of UK Hearthstone, a lot with players like him and George C having a lot more success in the past, and Board Control kind of starting to take the lead now, who we might get to see later on in the day. But we are going to be jumping into the first game, and for Gaara, kind of a very Gaara style of deck. He's hit rank 1 legend multiple times with this deck, I believe. In the Control Mage, the big Spell Mage, which we see falling by the wayside a huge amount for most of these players, because I don't know where you fall on it, Lorinda, but I think most players just argue the raw power level of the deck is not good enough to bring to a tournament.
Yeah, it was fine in the previous meta, but that's when it had other stuff.
Right.
Able to, like, Hatiesh, etc., just generating minions.
Well, yeah, just Ice Block, things like that as well. Yeah.
Card,
yeah, that helped a lot.
And GreenSheep, no surprise here, playing what I think we just call even Pally now. There was a point where the Valanier wasn't so common, but basically it's in every single...
You are not allowed to call this Valley Pally.
I'm not going to.
I will not listen to Ike's ramblings
Pally
on Twitter. Yeah, I will not suffer through
I know,
that.
Ike sort of beats him when it comes to Dreamhack with his all-time record of 13-0. So
okay,
he can say what he likes for now. We'll catch him soon. But yeah, it's interesting to see this mage deck. You and I have cast a lot of mage decks over this last year.
We have indeed, with not so fond memories of it. I believe I can speak for the both of us with some very long Control Mage mirrors. But this is should be, I believe, a lot more of an interesting matchup. And as it is last hero standing, the queue order does matter here. You want to get yourself a nice, you want to get the ball rolling with your matchups. And for Gaara here, I think he's put himself in a decent position, I would argue. He's got a good amount of board clears to fight back against the even Paladin, which can be very important for the likes of Call to Arms, obviously. And then some real late game power. As soon as he finds Frostlich Jaina and he isn't dead, he should be in a great spot. Yeah,
last hero standing, your pick order, a lot of the time you open with one of two things. Either your throwaway deck, which you kind of, the one you don't think is going to get a win, you chuck it out there, see what happens, and then you counter your opponent's first deck.
Yeah.
Or your sweep deck, which you just think, well, you can't counter this, I'm going to 3-0 you. So I feel like Gaara's playing his throwaway deck and GreenSheep's playing his sweep deck at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like to me, because obviously with the Warlock sitting behind in the wings for GreenSheep, which could be a Zoolock, although I very much don't anticipate that to be the case. Control Mage has traditionally done very badly against Warlock. It is not the matchup you bring Control Mage for. And the Spiteful Druid as well, I have to imagine, you're also going to be suffering. They've got a lot of threats. They can also be fairly aggressive. And without the likes of Ice Block now, you're also vulnerable to the aggressive strategies as well as the value ones.
And talking of value, this is interesting how the Paladin works, right? I mean, it is fundamentally a deck where you kind of hit your opponent in the face.
Kind of.
But in this sort of matchup, you need to pace it in such a way that you get lots of value over the course of the game. And obviously, having that Valanier in the opener is a big deal for that value. Now Chain Gang's been picked up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Valanier is, the control killer card. It's obviously potentially unlimited value if you're not met with silence or transform effects. But obviously for Gaara, we can see that pesky little polymorph waiting in the wings, which I would have to imagine is going to be reserved for exactly a minion with Valanier's buff on it. But then on the other side, for GreenSheep, he's already got a pretty neat little combo in hand, which could potentially play around that.
Yeah, he's got to pace this so well.
He does.
Looking at how he's going to do this, he's just going to go at it now.
I mean, this is how you beat control decks.
Yeah.
This is like Blessing of Kings is how you beat Warlock, Priest. I haven't played against much Control Mage, but I would have to imagine this is one of the ways you're going to be doing it.
And there's that balance I was talking about. You don't just shove the Swampoos into face and give the Mage 2 cards from his Acolyte. You've got to balance it to some degree. You can't just go flat out. You usually can't just go flat out. Sometimes there's a good time for it.
Yes.
That's why he took so long over that decision.
Yeah, because like you said, it was potentially not an overcommittal, but it was a big committal of resources, that Blessing of Kings. Getting that charge 4 damage as well as the buff is incredibly useful in these kind of matchups. And now, GreenSheep's still got respectable follow-up and not particularly high power on the board, but enough to be getting on with. And basically, it looks to me at the moment, he's not going for anything close to a value plan. It's going to be aggression, because he's got that kind of sleeper combo that I feel like was slept on for such a long time in Equality into the
Avenging Wrath.
Avenging Wrath. I was going to say Holy Wrath. That is not a good combo. Do not play Equality Holy Wrath.
It might be okay.
It also might not.
Might not. He had the option there to hold back the Chain Gang and wait for a massive value gain, but he knows the polymorphs in his opponent's deck. This is where you have to start actually thinking like your opponent's going to just polymorph it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You can just get on with it and not even worry about trying to set that up.
That's actually kind of a good point. Because obviously I alluded to the chain gang combo with Valanir earlier on, giving you 2 Valanirs back to hand and getting you a bunch of chain buffs over and over again. Oh man, but if you went for, what, Loot Hoarder hero power on that last turn, that's 3 power you're putting on the board. The Loot Hoarder can just get pinged.
Yeah.
That feels way too slow to me.
Yeah, he's really had to put in the time here to just go at it, or the timing, not the time. And still 18. Gaara's looking, you've never stabilised against this deck, as you say, because of the Avenging Wrath stuff, but looking like he's on the edge of getting some stabilisation here.
Yeah.
He needs it. There's no ice block, of course.
There is no ice block, but with the addition of that card you see towards the right of Gaara's hand, the Witchwood Piper, which draws the lowest cost minion from your deck straight to your hand.
Right.
Pretty much always getting you the Arcane Artificer. It just gives you a kind of pseudo ice block effect where you are still very vulnerable to the likes of burst damage through Avenging Wrath and Valanir. Getting that consistent heal with the combinations like Artificer into Blizzard should do a good enough job, I would say, in this game to keep him alive.
Yeah, the Piper's been a big revelation in this deck, getting those 2 Artificers, and also the backup plan, if you happen to draw them, you get a Doomsayer, which is fine.
Right.
But choosing to go really low here.
Yeah, I believe that the spell that was chosen off the Keysmith was Counterspell, and therefore Avenging Wrath would not be able to be played for lethal on this turn. And even if it wasn't, because with Discover it's kind of hard to see which one was chosen, for GreenSheep, he has to be very careful because it could be Counterspell. If he goes for Avenging Wrath here and it gets countered, that feels so dreadful.
But what he can do is spam the board with pretty much enough attack to win, and then next turn he can go Equality Avenging Wrath. There's not enough minions on the board for Gaara to worry about the equality side. That'll proc the counterspell.
I like it.
And get 6 or 7 to face. We can see, however, that the Artificer is in hand.
Right.
And that's a big deal because Gaara's actually going to be able to heal out of range, just about.
And Gaara is going to heal out of range. He is probably the premier control mage player at the moment because he's one of the few people actually playing the deck. Exactly. Very unpopular at the moment. And I think he should, know what he's weak to. He realizes burst damage is how he's probably going to be losing the game.
I mean, we talked about GreenSheep's achievements, but another one we neglected. He did make it to the Bahamas for the Winter Championships last year, hence the golden card back, because that wasn't available for Worlds 2014.
Goodness.
Yeah, we sort of write him off as the old school guy, but he's just been in multiple big events.
Absolutely. Still streaming a lot as well. Often see him on Twitch, grinding away on the ladder, putting in some good results. As now for Gaara, like we said, he's got the combo of Artificer into either Polymorph, or either Blizzard or Meteor here, or Polymorph.
Yeah.
All of which would offer almost complete board clears.
Which would? Oh yeah, I see what you did there.
Very clever. How long have you been sitting on that one for? Since the Witchwood came out, I would imagine.
Pretty much. All of which have downsides, all of which have upsides.
Right.
Obviously, the Polymorph leaves you not gaining that much health.
Yeah, and still leaving a 1/1 on board.
Meteor gives your opponent another Valanir, which you probably can't deal with over the course of the game. I think he has to do this. It's not going to work out too well for him. Yeah, because if you give back the Valanir, you just lose the long game, even if you survive the short game. If he hasn't got Avenging Wrath here, you then start getting into control, I think.
But you didn't have to give him the Valanir. You could Blizzard on this turn and Polymorph on the following turn.
Oh, okay.
And in this position, with Equality into Avenging Wrath, if it is the counterspell, which we can see it was, it's not lethal. Even with if the Equality was allowed to proc, it would still not be lethal available on board. But he's getting tremendously close. The main thing for GreenSheep here is that Artificer must die. That cannot stay alive if he's going to win this game. So Argent Commander is just off the table, which is kind of what he would rather play, because he would much rather save this Avenging Wrath for when he can get all the missiles through to face. That's what you want to do with that card in these kind of matchups.
Yeah, and going the other way with that, obviously you want to play Call to Arms the second you can play it.
Sure, absolutely.
It's not available there.
Improve your draws.
Clears, all that stuff going on. Yeah, to improve your draws.
And so now for Gaara, still the ability to find that second Artificer in his deck. But going for that on this turn with no spell to combo with it immediately does not feel all too necessary. And as for the Lich King card here, Army of the Dead, probably not what he was looking for. Much more things like Death Coil, Death and Decay.
He wouldn't have minded gaining 5 health, but he doesn't want to draw his really poor minions and put them into play and burn all his spells. That doesn't seem ideal.
But even so, he's hanging on by the skin of his teeth here.
How many jugglers?
A timely juggler. Ooh.
GreenSheep going for the juggler.
Yeah. This is a pretty rusty juggler as it is firing off no missiles at all towards the face.
I mean, rusty, is that not what they're supposed to do? They just always hit the wrong thing. They don't understand.
Like 3 Edgar Wright fans in chat got that reference, I promise you, and they all loved it.
Did they?
Loved it.
I never get your references.
No, you don't.
It's almost like we're from different generations or something sometimes.
Oh, man. So for Gaara now, obviously, Blizzard is looking pretty fantastic here, but he has to realize he's still on a very low health total. He probably assesses now he's a spellbreaker away from dying.
Right.
So he wants to save these board clears to go in combination with the Artificer. He really wants to play that Witchwood Piper on this turn, so that next turn he can go Artificer, board clear, and probably win. But if he doesn't clear off the board this turn, he still dies to Spellbreaker, so I would expect to see some kind of a board clear here, be it Blizzard most likely, or potentially Flamestrike, and then you follow up afterwards on the next turn, withdrawing that Artificer, preparing for, on the following turn, finally gaining some health.
Using to ping the Berserker there while he had the chance, but he's interesting because next turn he's going to be using another AoE. The point of damage to face could start adding up here in terms of racing. I guess he wants to get rid of any Tarim targets. That's exactly what's happened.
Reporting for duty.
And this is getting so close to the victory for GreenSheep here, just right knocking on the door of lethal, and we know that he still has a bunch of burst threats that he could get. It's the other Avenging Wrath, True Silvers, another Argent Commander if he has it in the deck. So much stuff that he could throw down to just win on the spot. But Gaara, with so many cards in hand, he just needs one more turn, I would say, to just lock out the game in his favor, or a Frostlich Jaina, something like that to put him out of range of ever dying.
I mean, Piper Blizzard here will get him into that second Artificer, and at that point he could just survive. If he's willing to take that one top deck chance, because he knows he's...
Oh, man.
GreenSheep's had 2 turns where he could just kill Gaara if he had the stuff. Gaara knows the stuff isn't available.
I agree, he has to take that one risky turn, but man, does this have to feel bad for Gaara. This is not the situation you want to be in, where you are just giving your opponent the draw that you know they could get it at any point onwards.
Yeah, first game... let's see what happens. First game of the day as well. You just want to get a nice, easy win under your belt. You don't want to be playing GreenSheep or Gaara in round 1 anyway.
And he's clearly considering polymorph here with the Artificer, which I agree is not the right play, because it puts you up to 7. There's still 2 damage on the board, so you're effectively at 5. You're gaining 2 health, and the Artificer will likely die as the Commander is ripped off the top by GreenSheep. This is the mark of a true aggro player right here, drawing your charger to finish out the game. And overall, I liked a lot what I saw from him there. There was the real break point for GreenSheep, I believe, on turn 5, where he could have saved back the Saronite Chain Gang for potentially full Valinir value, or just throw it down. Try and kill your opponent aggressively, and it worked out very well for him.
Yeah, in fairness, I mean, he had 3 or 4 turns there where he could have won anyway if he drew the right stuff. It's not like he's just top-decked for the win there. He had several chances to draw as it went on. You know, Gaara played pretty well there. I think he had to take that chance, because if he doesn't die there, I think he wins that game.
I agree. And, you know, he did not get the premier Control Mage hand. He didn't get Doomsayer or early other minions that you can play in that deck, like occasionally a Plated Beetle is played, things like that. Just your early drops you want to throw down.
He didn't get the Disastrous one either. He did have the Fury, the Blizzard. It's one of those sort of average hands, like looking, in case we see him again later in the day with those decks. Yeah. That wasn't a catastrophe of a hand, but it also wasn't the best. I mean, you don't win the board fight, but you do slow them down while you draw into the AoE with the beetles and stuff. Very true.
As I'm having to shift my mind over to last hero standing, as GreenSheep is going to be lining up the Even Paladin once again, which is a pretty good spot to be in. It was a deck that really does not have too many dreadful matchups, to be honest. I suppose the biggest counter Gaara could throw down, I would say, is probably the Priest, the Control Priest that we know to be pretty effective against the Paladin decks. If it's the Dragon variant, which is maybe not being edged out at the moment, but players are definitely experimenting with Dragon-less versions of the deck, I see more and more.
It's interesting because, I mean, in last year's standing, your deck is here to do a job. This Priest deck is here to beat the Paladins.
That's a good point.
Beat is a very sort of tentative word. We both agreed that it's not like a massacre.
Yeah.
But you also, if you're in a situation where you ever have to leave Rogue up, you want those Dragons in there to have any chance at all of beating the Rogue.
Right.
So the builds of these decks are going to be interesting, and we're going to go into game number 2.
As we get to see the Warlock, which he thinks is
So it must be control.
Yeah, it must be control if he thinks that's the best counter to Paladin, because I know a lot of players have been struggling to beat the Paladins with these Q blocks, because your board clears, your board clears in the early game are just as good, but your ability to gain the board early on is a lot less, because throwing down a giant on turn 4 does not beat even Paladin. You're probably just dead a few turns later because they played Blessing of Kings or whatever. And this is a pretty decent hand for GreenSheep to be getting on with. He does not have the 2-drop, the power 2-drop like Plated Beetle or Amani Berserker. But
You're a big fan of the 4s, right?
I'm a big fan of the 4s. That's exactly what I was going to say. In this matchup, you don't want the 2-drops nearly as much because they die to Hellfire, Defile, all that nasty stuff. Whereas Blessing of Kings and Call to Arms, and even the Glass Knight, that is what you're looking for. That's how you destroy this deck.
So the thing you have to do here if you're GreenSheep is, to some extent, tiptoe around Defile. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
You've got to not overdo it.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a chance to get the Defile out of their hand and then play more stuff,
yeah,
you can go for that as well.
And I would argue it's kind of easier than you would think to play around Defile with this deck. Like, obviously Defile is a very good card against even Paladin, considering you're making so many 1/1s, but with most of the Direwolves being phased out of the deck, there's not that many 2-health minions you're playing in your deck, so usually you're not going to be too vulnerable to a Defile, as both jugglers are pulled out right at the start. Some beautiful ordering from GreenSheep
I
there.
actually think Gaara's in a really good spot here, though.
Yes.
Because the 2 Hellfires are going to boost 2 Spellstones,
yeah,
which is going to give him so much health later on, and he's going to draw, and he's drawn into something good, because his whole deck is full of demons and stuff now.
Yeah.
And stuff. It's like 2 demons, but hey, it sounds good.
And that was actually a very interesting point there that we didn't actually bring up, because obviously playing Call to Arms on turn 3 is never a bad turn. You're always happy to go for it. But he had a 1/1 against a 2/3 Beetle, or a 2/2 Beetle. He could have just gone Coin Kings, start attacking to face, and then if it was cleared, follow up the next turn with a Call to Arms. And with this line of play, he ends up with a Divine Shielded massive minion, which is probably even less likely to die to a Spellstone or Silence, something like that.
Quite a lot of Glass Knight being brought to this tournament as well. It's really? Definitely not a staple, but I mean, again, we don't have the deck list currently, but like flicking through last night, various lists, there's a lot more Glass Knight than I was expecting personally. Interesting.
Was it the F2K guys who brought it to playoffs, I believe, with their dino-sized tech thrown in there as well?
Yes, it was.
As Gaara gets, I mean, you said it, the Spellstones for 7 attack. It's just absurd. You should not be getting this by turn 6, especially with 2 of them. It's simply too strong. As GreenSheep does get a reasonable answer to this Void Lord to start fighting back. The thing is, Valinir, when you have a bunch of taunts in the way, is just too slow, to be perfectly honest. It's not going to be getting the job done.
Yeah, and look at this hand for Gaara. I mean, it's not just a Spellstone anymore. It's the second Void Lord into Mr. Gul'dan himself. And interesting to note that had there been the nerfs, just got to keep an eye on that through the
I was thinking the same thing.
The Lackey would have been too slow and he'd probably have lost. Not have lost, but he wouldn't have needed a hand like this.
I totally agree.
That's for the only 1 mana difference doesn't make a difference people out there. Yeah. Actually, it would have made a huge difference.
And so now for Gaara, as you said, with him undeniably being in a fantastic position here, I guess the main checks he needs to make is keep the Owl for a minion with Valinir on it, because that's potentially how he loses, I suppose. Make sure he doesn't play too heavily into second equality, maybe for like an equality Avenging Wrath play.
Oddly enough, though, you kind of play into the equality on purpose so the Avenging Wrath doesn't hit you for too much, because the death battles resolve after...
Fair point.
After you be in the face. You've only got like 2 Void Lords up, you get hit for 6. So to some extent, you actually deliberately let them kill your board. To some extent, obviously. You've got to balance it with everything in Hearthstone.
And so Gaara wondering, what is the point of Mortal Coil? Why would I say that? I guess thinking, I don't know, maybe it makes Defile maths a little bit easier later on. It's not doing all too much here.
Yeah, what do I need? I mean, you Mortal Coil cycle, what do I need? I have everything. I'll just put this in the bank for later.
Yeah. And at this point, he can just stop drawing, because with second Void Lord in hand, Gul'dan in hand, even a Rin that he picked up off the Stonehill, he could now potentially start going for value lines of play, as GreenSheep does actually manage to hit the Valinir onto these Saronite chain gangs. But the problem is, he has no minions in hand. So if Gaara had made the read there to kill everything off, which he did not decide to do, that would have been Valinir gone. Like, it would have been equipped, but there wouldn't have been any minions to buff quite yet in hand.
And Gaara's actually not getting that far off lethal himself.
Right.
He's far enough away that it doesn't matter yet, but one way to beat Valinir is just to kill the other player. He'll set up Gul'dan and all that good stuff first, of course.
Kind of a questionable play from GreenSheep as well, I would say, to go for, if he's going to play Call to Arms on this turn, attacking him with the Loot Hoarder first, because he's drawn a few of his 2-drops at this point. If he's playing the standard list with 9 2-drops, I believe, you can draw 3 before you Call to Arms is not getting full value. And I believe he's still below that threshold because he hasn't drawn too many of his 2-drops there. So maybe he figured out, even if he is playing Call to Arms, that he should get the full value no matter what.
Yeah, it's interesting to know, like, you need to know exactly what's left in your deck at all times.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a Thalnos yet from Sheepy, ever, have we?
We have not.
So that can be a thing he might be saving for.
Could be in there. It's far from mandatory at this point, but finding its way into a lot more of the lifters. He's playing Wolves, which is a very unfashionable choice, I would say.
It's also a very GreenSheep choice.
It is a very GreenSheep choice, you're right.
Yeah, I've seen Vertigo, the Indonesian captain, just moaning that people weren't playing like Blood No Mage for the longest time.
Yeah. I was trying really hard there to make a joke about how wolves do not concern themselves with the opinions of sheep, but wasn't quite forming there. Have you seen Game of Thrones?
SWF. No, I haven't seen anything.
Goodness sake, Neil.
Is that one where they like get on like a train to a secret wizard place or something?
Yeah.
Okay, thought.
Yeah.
So Sheep has actually managed to get into a position here where there's a game of Hearthstone still going on, which is pretty impressive considering.
Very impressive, yeah.
However, Gaara has managed his resources very well. He still has that second Spellstone and his Hellfire hanging around, which didn't look like it would happen.
Absolutely. And, like you said, GreenSheep's given himself the chance to take this, which is Valanir on a Saronite because it's less vulnerable to silence. As we see, he still has a Valanir knocking about, but like you pointed out earlier on, he's just going to be dead. He is, Gaara is what? 3 damage off lethal at this point already. And we'll just be pushing aggressively to close out the game with Gul'dan on the following turn. It just feels to me like there is still little chance that GreenSheep can take this. However, with a completely clear board, Avenging Wrath is full 8 damage to face.
Right.
You can follow up with a second one on the next turn. This turn, Argent Commander into Blessing of Kings. GreenSheep has to close this out quick and just pray that Gaara does not have the Gul'dan, which we can see he does, which will probably close out the game in his favor. But GreenSheep has done a tremendous job of putting himself close here, at least.
All he's thinking is, how do I get this buff onto this commander interface? And he doesn't know about Gul'dan, so he's got to weigh up, can I beat Gul'dan or can I not? And if it's not there, how do I beat it, etc.
So maybe he goes True Silver into Argent Commander on this turn, just voluntarily destroying the Valanir to get the charge damage from it. It was worth considering, actually, because he's probably not going to have time to play all these cards from his hand anyway over the next few turns, because either he wins or he's dead.
Yep.
It's over in like 2 turns no matter what.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think this is the right play, but that's what it took him so long.
Yeah,
like people watch aggro players
I
play,
agree.
and they make it look
agree.
so easy, but you have to consider all these things that sometimes are the right play.
Because, basically what it comes down to is if you don't get the Valanir buff on a charging minion, it's not going to make any difference this game.
Right.
Clearly we can see it's over anyway. Gaara makes a very nice counter pick with the control, going with the control Warlock. And maybe that's kind of his strategy at the moment with, as we can see, what are very likely 3 control decks, in addition to what is probably an even Paladin, unless he's going with the Crane school of thought. I think he's probably making sure no matter what happens, he's always got a chance against even Paladin, because we know it to be an incredibly well-represented deck, and the Control Mage usually, I believe, should be in a pretty good spot against it, and especially the Warlock and Priest.
So that makes it likely that GreenSheep's Rogue was the Quest Rogue.
Yes, I would definitely agree with you now, yeah.
What do you pick now into this? Presumably Druid. Again, we don't know what his Warlock is. I'm going to say it's probably Cube, just because of player. And we're sorry we don't have those. There's an issue. We'll have that sorted later in the day. Yeah,
I think with the remaining deck, so like, Druid of any kind, be it Taunt Druid or Spiteful Druid, I think has been wildly debated and kind of misunderstood with its relationship against Warlock, because Fino actually did a show match of this exact example earlier on.
To prove it was 50-50,
in this
right?
meta. Yeah, exactly, with Taunt Druid up against Q-Block, and it didn't even feel close. Like, you could argue that the lists maybe weren't perfectly refined to beat Q-Block for the Taunt Druid, whatever. And obviously this is most likely Spiteful Druid that we're going to see from GreenSheep, but it suffers from similar problems, I would say, where you don't have the necessary removal. But in the end, he thinks with what is very like likely Q-block now that we see Spirit Singer Umbra. It leaves him with a better chance.
I think the Q-block has a decent matchup against Control now. I think
Absolutely.
for the longest time it was reasonably close, but Q-block just didn't really get hit by the loss of like N'Zoth. And Control Warlock just sits there and goes, I'm not as good as I was.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
You know, the extent of the hit was pretty big, so...
However, GreenSheep did not find the cards he was looking for here, throwing away Lackey, I believe, as well, which is, you know, a decent card in this matchup. If you can find Doomguard, start cubing it, hitting your opponent, it's one of the premier options. But obviously, the absolute creme de la creme is or Giant into Faceless, or Giant into Tap Giant, or Skull. That's what you want.
Skull into not weapon removal.
Right. Yes,
it's getting to the point where I'm waiting for somebody to bring one of these without Skull in it.
Q-block without Skull.
I'm just waiting to see it happen.
That's a meme. That is a meme. This is going to be like playing Q-block without Skull is going to be the new drawing patches was actually good here. Like, you're never going to do that. Like,
it's like Darrett casting without Lorinda. It's just, you know,
it just doesn't work.
Takes it apart.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Dad.
But yeah, I mean, obviously it makes a lot of sense, and it is pretty much the new meme. But you know, I've seen more than one streamer.
I see your point. I see your point. Yeah, and well, okay, it's worth mentioning that while it is not, I still believe you should be playing Skull in your Q-block. Often not played correctly, because for example, if GreenSheep found a Skull off the top here, going Giant into Skull, I think, is not the way to capitalize with this deck.
Right.
Obviously, the Doomsayer now has been played, so we can't play the Giant here. But going Giant into Faceless or Giant into Tap Giant is a lot better than kind of holding back with the Skull. If you have pressure, you want to turn it up to the absolute maximum. You want to kill your opponent very quickly indeed.
Just to point out there that Gaara basically played the Doomsayer going into that Giant
yes,
turn,
that
so
is
the GreenSheep is now... It makes a real mess of your hand because it clutters it all up for the rest of the game. And Darrett is wringing his hands together excitedly. What's happening, Darrett?
Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't go Coin Lackey was the main thing. And obviously, lots of reasons to not go for that. He didn't have a good follow-up, like another Lackey. He's probably not playing cubes in this deck. So I suppose saving the coin for Coin Voidlord into Voidlord is probably what he's thinking a little bit more heavily.
Well, he also drew Rin that turn.
Yes.
Is it too slow?
He's not going Coin Rin. No. When would you ever go Coin Rin on turn 5? Because
in the mirror.
Okay, well, in the mirror. But against Q-block on turn 5, they're either playing Skull, Lackey, or Giant there, all of which are too much pressure to go for the Rin here. And GreenSheep has to go for it a turn late, kind of floating a mana on both of these turns here with Giant into Faceless. But the essence of the play is still there. He has still got this tremendous amount of pressure on board. If he has a silence effect in his deck, even a Voidlord could not help Gaara here as... Oh my god, okay.
Yeah, he's got both. I was just going to cut you, but I was waiting to see. It's okay, Darren. Darren just noticed that Gaara has a hand.
Yeah,
a Voidlord is in it. But
I literally said in the same sentence, maybe he's not considering going Coin Lackey because he wants to go Coin Voidlord into Voidlord. Goodness gracious me. Okay. We are assuming, as this looks like a very control-ish style of deck, that he doesn't have Doomguards in there. So this Lackey is like a bluff, basically, is all it's doing, and a 2/2 for 5, as some people were suggesting the nerf should actually be, just to make Lackey a 5-mana 2/2.
Cast it down, send coffee. But this is going to get a lot of damage done. And remove one of those Giants. And you do have time, like, your health total bounces back so efficiently that you can afford to take a couple of hefty smacks to the face. You can, but then the problem becomes if you start taking the game through to super fatigue points, that heal is so valuable. Every Dark Pact, Spellstone, all those kind of healing effects, even the Plated Beetles can just buy you that one extra turn. And obviously in this scenario, it looks like it's either going to be over pretty quickly for GreenSheep or Rin is just going to mean that fatigue is firmly in Gaara's favor. Rin is a long way from having a chance to become active here. Like these cubes, I mean, everything GreenSheep could want, he's got apart from an activator of his cubes. But he's got everything else.
And still no copy of Skulking Geist been found, kind of being phased out. That was more in the Mage deck and the Priest decks a little bit more. But something like that could help to counteract the Dark Pacts in this deck. As, like you said, GreenSheep is really a Dark Pact away at this point from being in a very good spot indeed. But now with Godfrey being found, there is more potential for board clears here. But we can see with GreenSheep also having found 2 Voidlords, while it was devastating for Gaara, it's fantastic for GreenSheep.
Right.
He does not want to pull Void Lords with his lackey. He wants to pull Doom Guards, kill his opponent.
And he's going to have every chance to do that.
Yeah.
But here is that health total. The bluff is over for Gaara last turn when he didn't trade in anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no point
Yeah.
continuing that.
Ooh. And now this becomes very interesting indeed, because obviously the Doom Guard is not out in play at the moment. Gaara has managed to maneuver a situation where there is no ability for the lackey to finish itself off so that a Doom Guard can be pulled out of the deck and you can lackey cube it, get all that nonsense, or cube into pact it, get all that nonsense going. It's kind of an awkward spot here where, yet again, it's a slow turn for GreenSheep. And Gaara, despite the tremendous drawback with the way this game has gone for him with drawing both Void Lords, it means his opponent probably won't be able to put on much pressure until he can go coin Void Lord into Void Lord. So he's, I don't know, it feels like he might have bridged the gap for all the pressure to come through at the moment.
He has in the time being. I mean, GreenSheep hand is so spectacular that he can still get it going, I think. But
yeah,
keeping that coin, as you highlighted at the time, is going to be key here for Gaara to even have a chance in this game. I mean, then he does start to buy some time to stick his Rin behind, and then GreenSheep is on that clock after those two Void Lords come down.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really have easy ways through, oddly enough, millions of different things that just have 1-3 stats.
Oh, and he went for the cube there on the lackey, which is sometimes a good play because you can pull out 2 more demons. Only 1 demon left in the deck now. And arguably more importantly, GreenSheep, the face player supreme, missed an attack to face with a Doom Guard. I am disappointed.
Disappoint indeed. You see him shaking his head there. GreenSheep has really close to perfect information about the hand here, as close as you can have. He knows the coins there, he knows the 2 Void Lords are there because
that's fair.
So
yeah,
missing that 5. I mean, he's an experienced player. Obviously, he shouldn't do it. It just shows that a little bit of rust early in the morning after a long travel day for all of these guys. We're going to mention it a few times because it is relevant. Like, sometimes we talk about home advantage and somebody's come just down the road in an hour's journey, but a lot of these players last night were coming in 5-6 hour taxi journeys they weren't prepared for.
Exactly, only a few hours sleep as well. But for GreenSheep, this turn feels a little bit more like what you want to do as Cube. Like, you want to do these really broken things as consistently as possible. And Cube Pact on a Doom Guard is one of those things. That's kind of how you make it work. But he needs to think heavily about how much he wants to play for value and how much for aggression.
Right.
Because obviously in the ideal scenario, if he wants to make the gambit that his opponent does not have silence, he could leave this the cube that has the Doom Guards inside it intact, faceless it on the following turn, which would be crazy amounts of value. But instead here, he's holding back a little bit. It does mean, however, he's very vulnerable to Lord Godfrey here. I think. Yes.
2, 4, 6. Yeah.
Yeah, with the Kobold Librarian as well. I'm just thinking about when, if he can stop, just like Lord Godfrey, just like hold back, just stop for a minute, mate.
Just stop doing that
Stop shooting, please, because he's going to kill the lackeys inside that cube, which will pull out another Doom Guard from the deck. There's still 1 Doom Guard left in that deck, but GreenSheep, shaking his head, he was not happy with that turn. And like, it was an incredibly complicated turn. I have to be honest, I was looking very heavily at Hellfire as something that kind of had to be played that turn, because killing off those Void Lords, these Void Walkers to get that extra 5 damage through to face, even if it was just a little bit more, could have made all the difference in the world. Because if it turns out that a Doom Guard is not pulled from his deck, his pressure just drops dramatically. Like, it just ends.
It's weird how you can make one small misplay. I mean, not attacking face with a 5 attack minion.
Yeah.
It seems like a huge misplay, but it's like one click of a button too quick.
Yeah.
That can snowball into more misplays so often. We've all done it, I think.
We've all done it. We don't have that Hearthstone APM. You show to teach us.
Okay, shows APM. Joke out of the way early in the morning, as usual. Right, so Sheep's got to gather his thoughts and work out what his plan is, because the last couple of turns have seemed a little bit autopilot.
I agree. I mean, he's thought about it a lot, but it just felt like he needed way more time. This is not a scenario it feels like he's comfortable in. Like with some Q-Block players, or any of the super complicated decks, like Q-Block, Quest Rogue, these kind of decks, there are players who you can just tell they know what to do. They just feel like they have the best play because they've probably been there before. This for GreenSheep feels like he's having to think very much on the fly, which, is not a bad thing necessarily if you're a good player. You can adapt to those situations very well, but it feels to me like he is unhappy with how he's performed with it thus far.
Yeah, and he just needs to get that out of his head and start performing like we know he can.
Exactly. As we can see some pretty good options on this turn, however, with Hellfire into Faceless, that will pull out a Doomguard attacking through to face 2 damage off lethal, which, you know, that's all APM click we talked about.
Wow.
It would mean he would have had lethal in this position, and he's still setting up for it here. As long as there is no Gul'dan, which we can see there is not, there's not much that can be done here. Can you set up a Lord Godfrey without playing the Librarian?
Yes, you have to use the owl, and it's still not enough, I don't think. Incredibly, it looks like he's getting somewhere here.
Oh, can it be true? Can Lord Godfrey not clear a board?
Never happens.
It never happens, Neil.
Never happens. There must be a way.
I'm not seeing it.
Is there any sort of siphon into Hellfire mess? No, because that's like 17 mana. Even Twitch chat only has like 16.
Yeah, I'm not
I can't
seeing
even
it.
see. I mean, GreenSheep has set that up a mile out, but I thought the second Void Lord would hang in there long enough, but...
Oh, if you go Siphon Solve, no, Hellfire didn't do it. Tapping for self-lethal there as GreenSheep takes it up 2-1. Turns out the more aggressive styles of play are looking pretty good in this scenario for him. I liked most of what he was doing in that game. Like, the overall strategy was obviously on point. Like, playing Giant as soon as possible, facelessing it, not trying to be too greedy, I would say, with his deck, but instead trying to focus on killing his opponent very quickly worked out very well from him. It's just tightening up of play. He needs to, you know, be showing a little bit more finesse with that deck.
Yeah, he needed to, like, he put himself in some spots, like if he draws the other Doomguard, he loses the game on the spot, that sort of thing. So, looked okay overall, apart from that one attack. And, you know, if GreenSheep can miss an attack to face, anyone can miss an attack to face. Going with serve in terms of counter cues, effectively.
He is, and okay, this is something that Lorinda and I were talking about on the flight over. It's going to be the Q block against what we expect to be Control Priest, and I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you what percentage you put that matchup at, which I totally admit I could be in the wrong here, but this is something I feel like I disagree with you on quite strongly.
So I feel the Q block is a decent favourite.
Right.
Like 65 to 70. I mean, the number I said at the time, which came out in a casual chat, was 80. I don't believe
sorry, I
80.
hate to pull you. Okay, I shouldn't put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. I like being put on the spot.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. If it wasn't going to be put on the spot, we could just hire a robot to talk, and he'd actually go to say it's ours. It'd be much better. But no, I said 80. I'm meaning sort of 65. Like that was the peak of Hearthstone, one side and just that doesn't have Rogue in it.
Fair point. Fair point.
So what do you think?
I think I can agree with you there. I think I misunderstood this matchup quite drastically when it first appeared.
Same.
Because Theo obviously popularized the deck, hit rank 1 legend with the Control Beast very quickly, and was kind of touting it as an anti-Warlock deck when there wasn't really a strong anti-Warlock deck at the time.
We saw people bringing it for that purpose,
exactly,
to target Warlock, and then halfway through one of the events we were casting, we realised this strategy doesn't work because this deck isn't the favourite.
Exactly. You know, the Warlock can just kill them, and if not, Gul'dan can just out-heal them. You have so much heal in there. And even with the control decks, as we saw a lot of the playoffs in the recent weeks, Shroom Brewer making a huge comeback, a huge appearance, where it hasn't been seen all that much before. You can just out-heal the damage that you can amass with Shadow Reaper Anduin. But as we can see here for Gaara, he's got a pretty decent hand to be getting on with anyway. Shadow Reaper Anduin you obviously keep in this matchup. It is how you win. You don't really have any other way of doing it.
The Holy Fire may swing the matchup a little bit back towards you as well. Like,
yes, absolutely.
Extra stuff, and that's why it's in there, really.
Well. Yeah, I mean, that's why it's been making the comeback. With even as I was talking about earlier on, the build without dragons in there that players like Casey, I believe, have been piloting very heavily, with Life Drinker thrown in there as well, and all these way more aggro or kind of face damage cards thrown in there to pull it back in your favor.
Just whips out the 3/3. Going for some damage.
Yeah, I mean, what is it doing here?
In the game or being played now?
Well, I mean,
in the game, it does nothing.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
It kills an army of 1/3s on turn 100 when you put the second one anyway.
Exactly, and if a Void Lord is dying and you're having to clear it up, something's gone wrong, because you should be Psychic Screaming it. That's what you're trying to do here, or at least mass dispelling it so you can push some damage through to face. And so, even if it only connects for 3 damage on this turn, job done. Like, that's what it needs to do in this matchup. That's a good outcome.
I was going to say this is about as teched as you can be against the Warlock, but GreenSheep's making a mockery of that statement with Skull and all the Doom Guards in the world in his hand and all the copy effects in the world, just saying, I am going to pummel you.
Yep, he is making up for lost time here in terms of Doom Guard attacks to face as he just slams everything towards the dome. Well, interesting. Not really an anti-Warlock card, but kind of an anti-aggro card, I suppose. Like, decent in the mirror, good against the aggro mages, just more healing in the form of Squashling.
Yeah, one Squashling's just really good because of the 10 mana play. That
it's just a good card.
Stabilize, you build a board, it finds you an alternative win condition just occasionally where you just sort of slap somebody for 10 the next turn. It's like the world's slowest Pyroblast. And GreenSheep's hand is just getting better and better.
It's an incredibly unreactive hand, however. So, you know, this board is a lot of damage for Gaara, and GreenSheep does need to be afraid of Mass Dispel, because if that comes down with, 10 damage exactly on the board, on the next turn he's just like dead to Mind Blast into Holy Smite. Oh, sorry, Mind Blast into Holy Fire. Like, it's a lot of damage, which he does need to consider, and without the likes of Godfrey, Hellfire, or Defile, is he allowed to go face here? Is that too aggressive a line of play? He would just kill his opponent very quickly indeed.
But he's going into the turn 7, that Psychic Scream turn to which you alluded. So he's going to have a lot on his mind here.
Also very true.
What can I do about that?
Because this has gone into like just a straight up race way quicker than I was expecting it to go.
Yeah, and that's down to the very early Dusky Boy being played.
Very true.
Doing a bit of damage in there, just making GreenSheep have to think this bit later in the game.
So taking kind of a middle of the road play, healing up, dealing some damage to the board, so he's a bit less vulnerable to a Mass Dispel, and also making himself a little bit less vulnerable to a Psychic Scream, because he is not playing out something like Taldaram there just to get that little bit of extra burst damage, waiting until afterwards, because even if there is a Psychic Scream thrown down here, Doomguard, there's still another one in hand. This is one of those games that rarely happens against Priest, where you play Skull, they don't have weapon removal.
Yeah, well, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. When does that happen?
But that, I mean, when you look at this board state now, GreenSheep's last turn looks to be absolutely spot on. He's eliminated all the threats, and he's still threatening lethal next turn himself.
Absolutely.
And that's with the threats that he thinks are in hand. I mean, as it happens, Gaara's hand is kind of bits and bobs, really.
And I think this is the main reason why I misunderstood the matchup at first, because I was thinking, sometimes the Warlock can out-heal the Priest. I was thinking that's the main win condition, but it's not. It's killing them. You just beat them up with Doomguards and Giants. Like, obviously, with the Control Warlock.
Right, that's a bit different.
Yes, you are looking to heal up, which is why we see Shroom Brewers in that deck, or even the Sacrificial Pacts in some of them to destroy your own Void Lord to heal yourself back up.
This is a lot of damage, is the technical caster term for how much is coming in here.
Or beaucoup de damage, as the French might say.
Honestly, if you're French and you're watching this broadcast, just like mute Darek or something. He's been doing this for days. Both of us have a very awful understanding of a little bit of French.
Yeah, nous sommes
and I'm aware of my awful understanding. And Darek, he likes to practice in the middle of English sentences.
Oui.
And so GreenSheep hasn't got the lethal, and means he's just taking time. It's so close.
It's just getting better and better. This hand is absurd.
And he knows there's no Psychic Scream, so he has the option to go for it if he wants.
Yep.
He doesn't know, but he's got a blooming good idea.
Well, it's a kind of middle of the road play, just playing Umbra here instead of the cube, because like you said, if you play a cube and they were holding back on the Psychic Scream, or if they draw it off the top, or even if they have Mass Dispel, you're very sad indeed. But going for Umbra there to set up for a cube on the following turn, it's just you win every time anyway. Oh, but Cube was a play around Anduin, actually, as you were pointing out playing around Psychic Scream.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, for GreenSheep there, it was pick your poison. What do you want to be weak to? Would you rather be weak to Scream and Silence Effect or Anduin? But a card was kept, I believe, by Gaara in Shadow Reaper Anduin. It had been on the left for the whole time. It had not been played. What card is that?
It's Anduin, right?
Other than Anduin, yeah. Like, keeping Alex Straza is probably too slow. Like, you're probably just going to die to the likes of Giant and Doom Guards. But Anduin, you absolutely keep.
I mean, do you keep his shadow visions and try and get mind blasts? Maybe, but no.
I don't
and
think
you'd
so,
have probably
yeah.
played it because
It's
you
like-
needed a psychic scream and you haven't. Even if that was a thing, I think you just keep handling.
Exactly, you'd keep the cycle cards like Cleric, I guess, like something like that to start cycling through. But even then, you're very weak to Hellfire and stuff like that.
But GreenSheep does have this really good reload now, and of course now he's got to start worrying not this turn, but what he's doing, because if he can't kill his opponent quickly enough, that mind control is going to be a big problem for him.
It's true.
He's got 2 turns, so he's got to sort of, that's his plan right now, is to do it in 2.
I feel like mind control is only going to be good if it allows Gaara to get face damage in. Like in terms of a value card,
Sure.
it's probably not going to swing the matchup too much because it's going to be a very stagnant board. Whereas if Gaara has a bunch of stuff on board and there's just a Void Lord in his way and he mind controls that, that's when it's a real threat for GreenSheep. And I think GreenSheep will be playing around that, trying to make sure there's not too many minions on the board and he either gets damaged through to face to win the game or clears everything up.
So Mass Dispel, trading the squashes and a couple of pings, gets rid of the giant. It's a horrible looking play. Like Gaara's
really
gonna spend
doesn't feel
That's
good.
going to be the first thing he sees, and then he's going to spend the rest of the turn trying to work out, I don't want to do that. How do I avoid having to do this?
I mean, like you say, pinging the giant feels terrible. You want this to go to face.
Yeah, because
instantly,
he's
like, as
getting
much
close
as
to
you can.
lethal, but he dies if he goes, if he's not careful.
You do know, however, that he is out of Doom Guards.
Yep.
At this point, both of them were drawn from hand and killed, not shuffled back in. So Bloodreaver Gul'dan is the only way he can get charging Doom Guards at this point. And he's going for it. He realizes by killing off minions here, he's never going to win. He has to set up that lethal scenario.
And I really think this is a good play. The same as the play in game 1, actually, which also which cost him the game.
So wait, he is now at 18 health as opposed to the 13 he would have been at. His opponent had 11 damage on board. I'm thinking if Mass Dispel and an attack to face would have been better there. Probably too vulnerable to a Hellfire to just kill you.
She just points things at the Even when he's not actually attacking.
This is always happening.
This might go to your face. Fear me. So next
Just in the middle of the match, pointing at Gaara's actual face.
Gul'dan is a thing, but so is mind control. And yeah, he's trying to sort of sort everything out now so that mind control doesn't really do anything. Look at how much stuff he's generating here.
Yeah. He's, I think, as you said, the main thing is he has tested for Psychic Scream, and he does not believe it is there. It's looking very much like it should be enough for him. And even with all this damage piling through for Gaara, Spellbreaker there to close out the game. GreenSheep, with his much more aggressive strategy, taking a pretty decisive victory, to be honest, over Gaara. This is 2 matchups for the Q block that I believe you could argue either side for, with Q block against Control Lock and Q block against Mind Blast Priest. But it just didn't really even look close there for GreenSheep, getting some truly tremendous hands and very nice play along the way, I would say, as well, with a couple of slight missteps. But it feels like he knows his matchups at the moment. Good understanding, which, as I highlighted at the start, is the skills that are going to be tested in this tournament.
A lot of experience there on show from GreenSheep as well. Like, he misses that attack. If it's your first Dreamhack and you miss the attack there, you might on stream, you might go to pieces. But what GreenSheep did was just, okay, I know I made a mistake, who cares, let's get on with it. And he just got on with it, and the next game and a half were absolutely fine.
Yep.
3-1, you get one up.
I do indeed, yeah. He's looking to be in a pretty good spot now. Gaara's lineup, I would have to talk to him, I think, to get his reasoning behind it, because there are players like Jala, who I was talking to earlier, or plays bringing even Shaman, basically, is the point I'm trying to make, which I would have underestimated as a strategy. But when they talk about it, it makes a lot of sense. You know, you realize the reasoning behind it, you like their thinking as to why they're bringing it. But Gaara's lineup, the full control-list strategy, I'd like to get his thinking behind it.
Yeah, we'll have a chat with him later on, but we're going to cut to a short break, then we can come back for some more round 1 action. Orange in view, I believe.